Last year, Michigan State football was a pleasant surprise. Led by their star transfer Kenneth Walker, the Spartans won 10-plus games, went to a New Year's Six Bowl, and Mel Tucker became one of the best young coaches in all of college football. After a disappointing 2020 season, Sparty bounced back in a big way last year, and after a $95 million extension to Coach Tucker, many believe that Michigan State was here to stay. They can now compete with the likes of Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, and that is why they are ranked in the top 25 to start the year. Tucker once again dipped his hands into the transfer portal, and many expected those guys to step up and keep Michigan State's trajectory on the same path they were last year. Unfortunately, things have not gone to plan in 2022. The team is 2-2, they look bad against Washington, and just nearly got shut out by Minnesota at home. There are flaws in almost every single part of this Michigan State team. Fans are getting extremely restless, and if things don't change soon, Michigan State could be out of contention for a bowl by the end of October. Things are currently on a downward spiral in East Lansing, and in today's video, we're going to take a look at Michigan State football, quickly talk about how the hype came to be, the season so far, why everything's been a disaster, and how they could also improve things. But before we can get started, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and we can do better than that, so quickly be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like if you want to support the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss when I upload. Now let's talk about Michigan State football. Mark D'Antonio did a terrific job at Michigan State. He got them to a college football playoff, and it always seemed they were near the top of the Big Ten. But eventually, the D'Antonio era started to spiral out of control, and they hired Mel Tucker. This came at a very unfortunate time, as this was right when everything in the world started to crash down. So after Tucker was hired away from Colorado, he had a huge mess to clean up. The 2020 team was not very good, as starting quarterback Rocky Lombardi struggled. They could barely get anything going on the ground game, and the defense was not any good. They did in fact though have a couple of good wins. They beat number 13 Michigan in week 2 27-24, and this showed that Tucker's teams could at least be competitive. They also upset number 8 Northwestern in late November. They beat 2 top 15 teams in year 1, but losses to Rutgers, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio State, and Penn State did not look good. The team went 2-5, so there was very little expectation for 2021. Rocky Lombardi transferred to Northern Illinois, but many wondered if Peyton Thorne was actually going to be the guy. That's why he brought in Anthony Russo from Temple, who was a multi-year starter and actually a really good player there for quite some time. Those two would battle it out, but eventually he'd give the job to the younger Thorne. At running back, he'd bring in former Auburn player Harold Joyner and also an underrated starter from Wake Forest by the name of Kenneth Walker. He was not highly recruited out of high school, and after 2 years at Wake Forest, he decided to transfer up to Michigan State for one last opportunity to become a star. They brought in a couple of wide receivers and a plethora of guys on defense. Tucker had successfully gone into the portal and gotten some players with high potential, but could they put it all together? Oh yes, it worked out very magically. In week 1, they beat Northwestern 38-21, and Kenneth Walker went for 264 yards in that game. This was when the world was introduced to Walker, and he would continue to go off. He was the leading rusher in 10 out of their 12 regular season games, and at one point, it looked like he had a chance at the Heisman Trophy. But we need to go back a little bit. After beating Youngstown State in week 2, they went on the road to number 24 Miami and dominated start to finish, winning 38-17. They were 3-0, and then survived a late scare against Nebraska to get to 4-0. After wins over Western Kentucky, Rutgers, and Indiana, Sparty was 7-0 and ranked inside the top 10 for a huge in-state matchup with number 6 Michigan. This was a battle for the top of the Big Ten, and this would be the game of Kenneth Walker's life. He'd go for 197 yards and 5 touchdowns, including the game-winning score late in the fourth quarter, which put them up 37-33. After a late interception, the game was finalized, and the Mel Tucker hype was now unreal. Sparty was 8-0 and looked like they had a chance at winning the Big Ten, but then they went on the road to Purdue. Michigan State had their second worst game of the season, as they just couldn't get going and could not stop Aiden O'Connell, as they lost 40-29. They would bounce back with a win over Maryland, but once again, the secondary was horrific against Ohio State. The Buckeyes killed Michigan State 56-7 and put Sparty back in their place. Kenneth Walker had such a bad performance, it pretty much eliminated him from the Heisman Trophy, and this showed the glaring flaws in Michigan State's defense. They had been so reliant on Kenneth Walker in that offense that when they stalled, the whole team stalled. Sparty would finish the season on a high note though, as they beat Penn State 30-27 in the famous snow game, and then they get selected to play in the Peach Bowl, where they won by 10 points over number 12 Pittsburgh. It was a very successful season, as the Spartans went 11-2, won a New Year's Six Bowl, gave Mel Tucker a huge extension, had a star in Walker, and the rebuild was ahead of schedule. Pretty much everyone assumed that Michigan State was just going to stick around for the next few years and that Tucker was one of the next great minds in the sport. He utilized the transfer portal really well in 2021, so people assumed he'd do the same in 2022. After Kenneth Walker got drafted by the Seahawks, he brought in Jarek Broussard and Jalen Berger from Colorado and Wisconsin. Those two were both big-time running backs who had high potential. They returned their star quarterback in Peyton Thorne, and Jaden Reed decided to bypass the NFL draft to come back for one more year. Sparty was seemingly loading up for a run at a Big Ten title, and that's why they started the season ranked number 15. The first game would come on a Friday night against Western Michigan, and they would win that game 35-13. In week 2, they'd shut out Akron 52-0, and the Spartans would climb to number 11 in the country. To be honest, I wasn't super impressed with Michigan State in their first 2 weeks, but they did win both of those games comfortably. They'd come out and put up a good fight against Washington. Led by a first-year head coach and transfer quarterback, the Washington Huskies took Michigan State to the woodshed in the first 2 quarters. They were up 29-8 at halftime, and Michigan State looked completely dead in the water. The offense did have some experience though, as they would come back, and eventually with 5 minutes left, made it an 11-point game. Unfortunately, they couldn't get a stop, and while it was a valiant comeback effort, they lost 39-28, and the game was never close. There was a lot of red flags that were shown against Washington, but luckily they'd have a home game against a mediocre Big Ten team to figure it out. At least, that's what people thought. The undefeated Minnesota Golden Gophers came to East Lansing this past weekend, and Mel Tucker knew exactly what they were going to do. They were to control time of possession, play good defense, and run the ball. He knew exactly what the strategy was. You'd think he'd have his team prepared for that, but he did not. Minnesota would dominate the game from start to finish, going up 34-0 late in the fourth quarter. With a minute and a half to go, the Gophers were literally up 34-0, and Michigan State could not get anything going. Peyton Thorne had 3 turnovers and eventually got benched. The offensive line couldn't do anything. They couldn't stop Minnesota's rushing attack, and fans were booing in the second half. Backup quarterback Noah Kim threw a late touchdown pass with 17 seconds to go, so at least it wasn't a shutout. It was an extremely embarrassing game though, and all of a sudden, many people are wondering if Michigan State is in serious trouble. They've gotten off to a 2-2 start, and they've looked bad. Peyton Thorne has 900 yards with 7 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and he has looked awful. I have heard rumors that he is hurt though, so maybe that explains why he is so bad. Jalen Berger and Jarek Broussard have been decent at running back, but Jaden Reed has not looked like himself this year, and they're not getting enough out of Trey Mosley and Keon Coleman at the receiver spot. The defense looks awful, the offensive line looks awful, and overall, the chemistry just looks really off. Well, hopefully they have an easy schedule coming up, right? Wrong. The month of October is going to dictate the remainder of the season, as this weekend they go on the road to Maryland. This is the same Maryland team that likes to throw the ball and kept it close with Michigan on the road. This game will not be easy by any means, but it's now a must-win scenario for them. If they drop this game, they are in ginormous trouble. After Maryland, they host number 3 Ohio State, and then they have Wisconsin at home. Wisconsin is just like Minnesota, so they're going to run the ball right down their throat. Ohio State is better than them in every single area, and they will probably kill them. After that, they go on the road to number 4 Michigan, and just like the other 2 schools, Michigan is better, has a terrific ground game, and has a good defense. There's a legitimate chance that they lose all 4 of these games in the month of October, which would drop them to 2-6. It doesn't fully eliminate them from bowl potential, but why is there any reason to believe they'll win a game if they had just dropped 6 straight? In November though, they have it a little bit easier as they go on the road to Illinois, have 2 home games against Rutgers and Indiana, and then go on the road to Penn State. Right now, I would pick Illinois and Penn State to win those games, and I think they split it between Rutgers and Indiana. If it all goes according to how they've been playing, this team is going to go 3-9. Maybe they have a chance at winning 5 games and a small chance at winning 6. But right now, Michigan State is in a very dangerous spot. Lots of the coaches are currently under fire right now, but Tucker is defending him. In his press conference, he said, quote, "I'm very confident in the coaching staff. I'm confident in the type of guys they are. We're just going through a tough stretch right now, but I don't have a lack of confidence in any one of our coaches on either side of the ball or special team." Of course, Tucker has to say that, but right now he is probably hitting the panic button. Some are now going to say he's the most overrated and overpaid coach in college football, and he quickly has to right in the ship. Before we end today's video, I want to diagnose the 5 problems that I believe are going on at Michigan State. 1 is the secondary. Last year this was a problem, but the rest of the defense and the offense was good enough for them to win games. The secondary has been horrendous this year, and with some of their better players getting hurt, it looks like it's only going to get worse. Second is the quarterback. I thought Peyton Thorne was a good game manager quarterback last year, but right now he's regressed in almost every area, and if he is in fact hurt, then this spells doom for them. They do have Noah Kim and Kattenhauser behind him, and if things continue to get worse, I would not be surprised if either Kim or Hauser get a chance. Third is the offensive line. Jarek Broussard and Jalen Berger are decent running backs, but right now they don't have a lot of holes to go through, and the quarterback doesn't have a lot of time because of the offensive line. There are a good amount of senior experienced players here, and if they can't figure out how to block, I don't see why the freshmen or sophomores would. The line is a problem. Fourth, I think they had way too much hype. I personally loved the Michigan State story last year, and I hopped on the bandwagon, but I saw no reason why they should have been ranked this high this year. Losing Jalen Nailor and Kenneth Walker were big losses, and I wasn't quite sure if they'd just be able to reload right away. I mean, the team was pretty bad in 2020, and many considered them in rebuilding mode. I think they had too much hype, and it got to their heads, which has led to their fall. Finally, I think Mel Tucker might be a little bit too reliant on the portal. Yes, he struck gold last year, but so far the transfers he's brought in this year haven't really been that amazing. And when you look at the roster, there are a lot of those transfer guys, and if they don't start getting some of their younger recruits in and give them time to develop, they could be in serious trouble, as they'll then have to become reliant on the portal for experienced players. Overall, I think Mel Tucker will eventually righten the ship, but if things continue to go how they are right now and nothing improves, then they are looking at a 3-9 or a 4-8 season, which will be a disaster compared to the hype and kill a lot of the momentum they had. But I'm not an expert by any means. If you're a Michigan State fan, what is going wrong with the team? What are your expectations moving forward, and how can these problems be solved? If you're not a Michigan State fan, give me your thoughts on this team. Give me another overhyped team I can cover in my next video, and also let me know another player, topic, situation, or anything I can cover next. Before you go, don't forget to also leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.